When Dr. Thomas Henderson became Memorial Hospital's most trusted emergency room physician, patients relied on him to save their lives during medical crises. But when his morphine addiction and insurance fraud schemes consumed him, he began killing patients for profit and murdering medical staff who discovered his crimes, turning the emergency room into a deadly harvesting operation. Before starting the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Now let's get back to the video. The Texas summer heat shimmered across Houston's medical district as Dr. Thomas Henderson organized falsified death certificates and insurance claim documents for what would become the most dangerous medical procedure of his 18-year career as the Southwest's most experienced emergency physician and trauma specialist. At 52 years old, Thomas had established himself as Memorial Hospital's premier emergency doctor, controlling critical care operations and patient treatment protocols that attracted insurance companies, medical research organizations, and pharmaceutical companies who valued his medical authority and his reputation for handling the most complex emergency cases, affecting life-saving medical procedures and trauma care coordination throughout the metropolitan medical community. Thomas's emergency department office occupied the most secure section of Memorial Hospital's trauma center, featuring patient monitoring systems, pharmaceutical storage facilities, and treatment coordination centers that allowed him to oversee the hospital's most critical emergency operations while maintaining absolute control over patient care decisions worth millions and medical insurance coordination affecting emergency treatment and pharmaceutical research throughout the regional healthcare system. The interior of Thomas's office reflected his mastery of emergency medicine and his understanding of healthcare expectations for both medical excellence and absolute precision during the most critical life-saving procedures affecting patient survival, featuring walls displaying medical achievements from prestigious institutions, photographs of successful trauma operations, and testimonials from grateful patients whose lives had been saved through his emergency medical expertise and innovative treatment techniques affecting healthcare advancement and medical education. But beneath Thomas's reputation for medical excellence lay a dangerous combination of prescription, morphine addiction, systematic insurance fraud, and calculated murder that had transformed his emergency operations into criminal enterprises, where threatening medical staff and suspicious investigators met their fate through medical accidents and witness elimination during vulnerable patient care procedures and emergency treatment activities. "Good morning, Dr. Henderson," said nurse manager Lisa Rodriguez, arriving for her weekly emergency department meeting about ongoing patient cases and hospital oversight that required Thomas's coordination for complex trauma procedures and emergency treatment protocols affecting patient care standards. Lisa had recently discovered irregular patient death patterns and had begun questioning Thomas's explanations about treatment protocols that seemed to bypass normal hospital oversight processes and medical ethics requirements. "Good morning, Nurse Rodriguez," Thomas replied with the medical authority and emergency expertise that had made him legendary among Memorial Hospital personnel, who viewed him as both life-saving physician and trauma specialist, capable of performing miraculous emergency procedures through sophisticated medical techniques and strategic patient care coordination, affecting emergency medicine and healthcare advancement throughout the hospital's trauma program. Lisa had become Thomas's most dangerous colleague, not because of her demanding medical requirements or her patient care responsibilities, but because of her recent discovery of unauthorized patient treatment modifications and her growing awareness of the insurance fraud operation that Thomas had been conducting while supposedly providing legitimate emergency medicine for hospital patients and trauma care programs. What Lisa didn't know was that Thomas had been systematically killing patients for insurance money and murdering medical personnel for over 3 years, using his doctor authority and access to emergency rooms to coordinate insurance fraud operations while eliminating anyone who discovered his patient exploitation or threatened to expose his criminal use of medical resources for financial gain and pharmaceutical trafficking, affecting patient safety and medical integrity. Thomas's transformation from respected physician to calculating killer had begun 5 years earlier, when his prescription morphine addiction had escalated from legitimate pain management following a medical conference injury to daily dependency that consumed his substantial medical salary and forced him into relationships with insurance fraud organizations who offered enormous payments for false death certificates and fraudulent medical claims affecting patient insurance benefits and pharmaceutical research coordination. His addiction cost over $8,000 per day, while his access to Memorial Hospital's emergency facilities and patient populations provided unprecedented opportunities for coordinating insurance fraud operations that generated millions through false medical claims and pharmaceutical theft affecting healthcare systems and medical insurance programs throughout the regional medical community. His criminal activities escalated when several medical staff and hospital oversight personnel discovered evidence of unauthorized patient treatment procedures and threatened to report their suspicions to medical boards and federal law enforcement agencies investigating healthcare fraud targeting hospital patients and emergency medical programs throughout Texas medical facilities. Thomas murdered his first victim, a suspicious medical examiner who detected irregular death certificate patterns, by orchestrating a medical emergency using contaminated pharmaceutical supplies that appeared to be healthcare accident rather than premeditated assassination designed to protect insurance fraud operations. The success of his first murder convinced Thomas that eliminating threatening medical personnel and suspicious oversight investigators was both necessary for protecting his fraud operation and achievable given his complete medical authority and his ability to coordinate with criminal organizations who could stage medical accidents and eliminate witnesses while providing plausible cover stories involving healthcare complications and emergency medical situations. Over the following 3 years, Thomas murdered 12 additional individuals using various medical methods and fraud coordination that took advantage of his doctor authority, his access to criminal networks during vulnerable medical procedures, and his ability to stage deaths as medical complications or hospital incidents that occurred during routine emergency activities with personnel who had access to sensitive information that could expose insurance fraud operations. His victims had been carefully selected based on their discovery of his criminal activities, their potential cooperation with medical authorities, or their knowledge of emergency procedures that could expose his criminal coordination and systematic exploitation of patient care for insurance fraud affecting hospital oversight and medical ethics compliance. His victims included Dr. Patricia Williams, an emergency medicine colleague who had discovered evidence of systematic patient exploitation and whose hospital consultation had resulted in fatal medication error staged by fraud assets during routine emergency treatment. Pharmacist David Foster, who had reported suspicious pharmaceutical activities and whose Memorial Hospital meeting had ended in fatal allergic reaction using drugs obtained through criminal networks. And Agent Jennifer Martinez, a federal healthcare fraud investigator who had been tracking medical crimes and whose hospital inspection had resulted in fatal exposure to concentrated morphine disguised as medical supply contamination affecting federal oversight of emergency medical operations. The insurance fraud operation had become extraordinarily sophisticated, with Thomas coordinating the systematic killing of patients during emergency procedures through carefully planned medical interventions that caused patient death while appearing to be natural medical complications affecting emergency treatment outcomes and insurance claim processing throughout the healthcare system. Emergency room procedures served as primary patient targeting operations, with Thomas personally coordinating the administration of fatal drug combinations and medical interventions that killed patients while providing legitimate medical cover for insurance claims and pharmaceutical theft affecting emergency medicine and healthcare fraud coordination throughout the medical community. The most disturbing aspect of the operation was the systematic targeting of vulnerable patients for insurance fraud, with Thomas identifying suitable victims through emergency consultations and medical evaluations that assessed insurance coverage and patient isolation from protective family networks who might investigate unexpected medical complications or question emergency treatment decisions. Multiple patients had died as a direct result of Thomas's insurance fraud operations, with victims experiencing deliberately induced medical complications and pharmaceutical poisoning that was attributed to natural emergency medical conditions rather than criminal medical intervention affecting their survival and family financial security through fraudulent insurance claims. Dr. Henderson, I need to discuss serious concerns about healthcare fraud and reports of patient exploitation connected to your emergency medical operations, said FBI Special Agent Maria Torres of the Bureau's Healthcare Fraud Division, arriving at Thomas's office carrying federal warrants to inspect his medical procedures and interview him about suspicious patient care activities. Special Agent Torres specialized in investigating medical crimes and had developed expertise in recognizing patterns of healthcare fraud and patient exploitation affecting hospital operations throughout medical facilities. Special Agent Torres's investigation represented an existential threat to Thomas's criminal operation, as her federal medical crime expertise and access to healthcare fraud databases could expose the systematic insurance fraud operations and connect him to multiple suspicious deaths during emergency procedures and hospital meetings affecting federal oversight and medical law enforcement cooperation. Special Agent Torres, I think there may be some misunderstanding about complex emergency medicine and the unfortunate reality that trauma patients sometimes experience medical complications despite advanced treatment protocols and federal healthcare standards, Thomas said, while discreetly activating a concealed medical alert system that would summon corrupt medical staff who were part of his fraud network for emergency elimination of federal law enforcement threats. Perhaps we could discuss these concerns in our emergency treatment facility, where I can demonstrate the medical procedures that might explain these tragic patient outcomes. Emergency medicine involves dangerous medical conditions that might appear suspicious to those unfamiliar with trauma care and pharmaceutical emergency coordination affecting patient treatment operations. Special Agent Torres agreed to examine Thomas's medical procedures, not realizing that the physician was leading her to a secure treatment room where previous murders had been committed and where Thomas planned to coordinate her elimination using fraud network assets, while staging the scene as federal agent targeting that occurred during medical investigation, providing cover for her elimination while appearing to be criminal retaliation rather than deliberate murder by a doctor protecting his insurance fraud operations. But Thomas's carefully planned murder of the federal agent was about to be prevented by the unexpected arrival of hospital oversight officers who had been investigating medical irregularities and had identified connections to his systematic fraud activities affecting emergency operations and patient care programs. Hospital Inspector Michael Santos had been conducting comprehensive investigation into medical fraud and healthcare corruption that exploited physician authority to facilitate insurance fraud and eliminate potential witnesses to medical crimes affecting hospital oversight and federal healthcare law enforcement cooperation. Inspector Santos specialized in investigating hospital crimes and had developed expertise in tracking emergency operations that compromised patient safety, while conducting systematic elimination of threats to fraud operations affecting medical care and emergency operational security. The hospital investigation had been initiated by reports from multiple medical oversight agencies and patient advocacy groups who noticed patterns of suspicious patient deaths and medical personnel casualties, suggesting fraud networks were infiltrating hospital operations to facilitate insurance fraud while eliminating witnesses through sophisticated methods disguised as medical complications. Dr. Thomas Henderson, I'm Inspector Santos with Hospital Oversight, he announced as he entered the treatment room where Thomas was coordinating Special Agent Torres's elimination. I have medical warrants for your investigation on charges of systematic healthcare fraud, patient exploitation, medical corruption, and multiple counts of first-degree murder related to your exploitation of emergency authority for criminal operations affecting patient safety and medical integrity. Thomas's reaction to the hospital oversight intervention was desperate attempts to maintain his medical credibility, as he realized that federal agents and hospital investigators had been investigating his fraud activities and connected them to systematic medical personnel murders and criminal coordination affecting hospital operations. Special Agent Torres looked stunned as she realized how close she had come to being murdered by the physician she was investigating for healthcare fraud. Her medical investigation had not only exposed Thomas's fraud and murder operation, but also prevented her own death at hands of a killer using medical authority as cover for systematic elimination of federal agents and healthcare crime investigation threats. The comprehensive investigation that followed Thomas's arrest revealed the full scope of his criminal enterprise and sophisticated methods he had developed to exploit medical authority for systematic healthcare fraud and murder. Forensic analysis of Thomas's emergency operations revealed extensive evidence of his fraud activities, including sophisticated pharmaceutical manipulation equipment for patient targeting procedures, detailed records of insurance fraud worth millions, and comprehensive files containing patient medical information that had been exploited to identify fraud targets and coordinate insurance claim processing affecting hospital patient populations. The investigation uncovered Thomas's connections to insurance fraud organizations who had been coordinating medical exploitation and hospital corruption operations, while using his physician access to kill patients and eliminate witnesses through sophisticated methods disguised as medical complications and emergency treatment accidents affecting hospital personnel and federal investigators. Most disturbing was discovery of Thomas's detailed knowledge of medical systems and pharmaceutical manipulation procedures, which he had used to develop increasingly sophisticated approaches for exploiting patients while eliminating medical personnel who discovered his fraud operations or threatened to expose his criminal coordination activities affecting patient safety and medical integrity. Dr. Thomas Henderson was ultimately convicted of 13 counts of first-degree murder, systematic healthcare fraud, patient exploitation, medical corruption, conspiracy with criminal organizations, and numerous other charges related to his exploitation of emergency authority for criminal operations affecting patient safety and medical integrity. The conviction sent unprecedented shockwaves throughout Memorial Hospital, prompting immediate reforms in medical oversight, emergency monitoring, and physician addiction prevention measures designed to protect patient populations from exploitation by corrupted medical officials involved in fraud activities. Several other physicians and medical officials were investigated for similar criminal activities, resulting in enhanced oversight of emergency operations and new requirements for treatment verification, patient protection monitoring, and federal cooperation measures, making it difficult for fraud networks to exploit medical authority for systematic patient exploitation operations. Special Agent Torres and Inspector Santos received recognition for their collaborative investigation and became specialists in medical crime investigation, developing new techniques for identifying healthcare fraud operations and protecting patient safety from exploitation by corrupted medical officials. Nurse manager Lisa Rodriguez and other surviving medical personnel required extensive psychological counseling and career rehabilitation to overcome trauma of learning that their trusted colleague had been systematically killing patients and murdering medical staff while exploiting his authority for fraud activities. The case prompted comprehensive changes in medical regulation, including mandatory federal oversight and addiction screening for physicians with patient care authority, enhanced monitoring of emergency operations and pharmaceutical procedures, real-time federal supervision of insurance claim processing, and new reporting procedures for suspicious medical activities involving patient safety violations. Thomas's conviction led to increased cooperation between medical oversight agencies and federal organizations investigating healthcare fraud, with new protocols designed to identify hospital systems that might be exploited for systematic criminal activities, while eliminating witnesses to medical corruption and patient safety violations. 5 years after Thomas's conviction and life imprisonment, Memorial Hospital continued implementing safeguards designed to protect patient populations from physicians who might abuse their positions for criminal purposes affecting medical care and federal oversight. The physician who had promised to save patients' lives and advance emergency medicine had instead used his medical authority to commit systematic healthcare fraud and murder while exploiting hospital resources for criminal coordination, threatening foundations of patient safety and medical integrity. Dr. Thomas Henderson's final prescription had been permanently canceled by comprehensive investigation of hospital and federal justice, where he would serve multiple life sentences without possibility of parole, proving that even medical officials who attempted to exploit their emergency authority for criminal gain could be identified, investigated, and brought to justice when dedicated federal agencies worked together to protect patient safety from predatory medical corruption. The doctor's final prescription had concluded with his permanent removal from medical practice, serving as lasting reminder that those entrusted with patient care must never abuse that sacred responsibility, and that medical officials who would exploit patient trust and medical authority for criminal gain will ultimately face full consequences of their betrayal of medical integrity and patient safety. Thank you very much for listening. Please let us know what you think of this story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any other videos.